For hundreds of years, right, the violins made in this one tiny corner of Italy by masters like Stradivari and Guarneri, they've been the stuff of legend. I mean, their sound is considered the absolute peak of acoustic perfection. These instruments are so revered, they actually have names, personalities, and yeah, price tags in the millions. But what is it that makes them so special?
Right. Let's just get straight into it because that is the million-dollar question. Literally. For centuries, musicians, makers, everybody has tried to crack the code, to replicate that legendary sound. Was it the wood? Some kind of secret varnish? Maybe a lost technique?
Well, the problem was pretty obvious. You couldn't exactly take a multi-million-dollar instrument apart to see how it was made. So all the secrets of its construction, the very soul of the instrument, were hidden from view, completely locked away inside that delicate wooden body. But that's all changing now. Using high-resolution CT scanners, and you can think of this as a super-powered X-ray, we can now digitally peek inside these priceless violins. We can see all the construction details without leaving a single scratch. We're finally getting to see the maker's original work, untouched. So let's start right there by taking a look inside. Because what these scans are showing us, it isn't some single magic formula. No, it's something way more personal, the unique fingerprint of each master luthier. So how does this work? Well, the science behind it is called attenuation. And that's really just a fancy way of saying how much a material absorbs X-rays. Wood barely absorbs them, so it looks pretty faint in a scan. But glue, it absorbs a lot more. And metal, of course, absorbs the most. By looking at these differences, a really detailed 3D map of the violin's inside just emerges, showing every cut, every joint, every single hidden detail. And the results are just fascinating because they basically reveal the maker's personality. If you look here, you can see Stradivari, working confidently with willow wood, often overshot his knife cuts. That's a sign of a sure, really rapid hand. Then you have Guarneri del Gesù, who is known for his raw power. He embedded his lining super deep, and you can even see these tiny nicks where he was cutting at speed. And then there's Paganini. His work is kind of like Stradivari's, but a little less refined. You can actually see where he split a block by just forcing a piece into place. Now, these aren't mistakes, they're signatures. But here's the twist. While the body of the violin itself has stayed pretty much the same for 300 years, its voice has not. You see, the secret to a violin's sound isn't just in the wooden box. It's also in the engine that drives it, the strings. So this is a really crucial point. Think about this. If Antonio Stradivari himself were to hear one of his violins played in a concert hall today, he might not even recognize the sound. The powerful, brilliant, projecting tone that we all associate with a Strad is actually a modern creation. And it's been driven by two major revolutions in string technology. The first big change happened around the 1790s. The whole setup of the violin was modernized to create more tension and a bigger sound. But the second revolution, the one in the 20th century, that was all about the strings themselves. It started with the steel E string, which added all this brilliance and power. And then in the 1970s, everything changed with the invention of synthetic core strings, like the famous Dominance, which finally offered the warmth of traditional gut strings with the stability and power of steel. So, this leaves modern players with a really fascinating choice. Do you aim for the original sound with historically accurate strings, or do you embrace the power and convenience of modern tech? It all comes down to what's at the core of the string. Let's just compare the two main contenders here. On one hand, you have gut strings, made from sheep intestine. They have this legendary warmth and a really rich, complex sound, but they are incredibly sensitive to weather and they take forever to stabilize. On the other hand, you've got synthetic strings, with a core of nylon or some other composite. These are the modern standard. They give you a great imitation of that gut warmth, but they're way more stable, powerful, and reliable. It's a classic trade-off between tradition and technology. And you can totally see this evolution reflected in what the world's greatest violinists chose to play on. The legend Jascha Heifetz played on gut strings for most of his career. But then look at Isaac Stern. He started on gut and then switched over to synthetic dominance. And today, modern titans like Itzhak Perlman and Hilary Hahn, they're known for using dominance. They're playing those exact same historic instruments, but with a completely modern engine. So players today are constantly navigating this balance between the historic instrument and modern technology. It basically makes them part musician, part technician, responsible for keeping these priceless instruments not just safe, but sounding their absolute best.
And that responsibility means that even a task that seems simple, like changing a string, becomes this high-stakes procedure. You have to change only one at a time, so why? Because the immense tension from the strings is the only thing holding that delicate bridge in place. If you took them all off at once, it would just fall, risking a catastrophic crack in a 300-year-old instrument. No pressure, right?
And that respect for the instrument's history extends to every little detail. You'll often see musicians place a soft cloth under the tailpiece. It's such a simple act, but it's foresight. It's there to protect that delicate, irreplaceable varnish from a slipping tool or a snapping string. It's a small ritual that shows they know they're just temporary custodians of a living piece of history. Now, this whole dialogue between old and new can also create some conflict. Players often have to battle these strange acoustic problems, like the dreaded wolf tone. This happens when the frequency of a note perfectly matches the natural resonant frequency of the violin's body. When that happens, the two vibrations interfere with each other, and it creates this ugly, stuttering sound. It's basically the instrument fighting itself. So how in the world do you tame the wolf? Well, it's a fascinating puzzle. Sometimes the solution is simple, a stickier rosin, maybe some newer bow hair, but often the answer comes right back to technology. A player might experiment with a warmer, more focused string, just subtly changing the physics to resolve that conflict between the modern string and the historic instrument's body. It's this constant dialogue between the player, the instrument, and the equipment. And that really brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. The perfect violin sound isn't some static thing that's been preserved in amber for 300 years. No, it's a living, breathing collaboration. It starts with the maker's fingerprint hidden deep in the wood. It's then shaped by centuries of technological innovation in strings, and finally it's brought to life by the musician, who has to navigate all of that history every single time they play. Which leaves us with one last question to think about. Is the sound that we cherish today something that's a historical artifact we should just try to recreate? Or is it something we're still inventing, constantly pushing the boundaries of what these incredible instruments can actually do? The answer, it seems, is still being written.